I thank all the invitees, the Forum of Industries and Trade Associations of Vadodara and also of the Chamber of Commerce representatives from the central Gujarat region for having invited me today. It's an interactive session, I understand. My opening remarks will not be too elaborate. We are meeting at a time when India's path towards becoming a developed economy by 2047, a goal that our Honorable Prime Minister has set before us, is very clearly laid before us with the confidence that the people of India have shown in the way they have helped recover the economy post-COVID. So when the uncertainties as a result of COVID and as a result of various different developments around in the world, whether it is a war, whether it is disruption of supply chain, whether it is the China-US not very smooth relationship, whether it is the disturbance in the West Asia region, whether it is the Red Sea and also the shipping routes which are now threatened because of piracy. So enough and more problems for countries to feel that the post-COVID recovery is among severe challenges and under stress. But in spite of that and despite that, because of a stable and visionary leadership, India has shown clear signs of a stimulated economy where every section, inclusive of small and medium, are all coming out and performing. Unless that kind of across the board performance happens, the recovery that we are talking about and the growth that we are showing, and a growth which is now seen by international observers also as a sustainable growth. Last year we were the fastest growing economy. This year, meaning the year which ended on 31st March 2024, we are the fastest growing economy. And latest revision in the numbers done by international organizations show that for coming year and for the year after that as well, India shall continue to be the fastest growing economy. This could not be possible unless both at the bottom and at the top, the leadership and its visionary outlook, being responsive to people's needs, designing and executing policies after listening and consulting to people who are actual stakeholders in every one of those areas, and at the bottom, in the ground, literally at the action happening areas, the people, the entrepreneurship, and the spirit with which our people have worked in their respective sectors, whether it's agriculture, whether it is the service sector, whether it is the intermediary activities, manufacturing, exports. You take every one of the areas, you see that it is the resilience of the people which is really bearing out the results. With the policy support, banks have come out of their distress. Companies have benefited by the rate reduction. The corporate tax rate which was brought down has helped companies to come out of their distress. They've de-leveraged themselves. And as a result, the health of the banks have also improved. Visionary and very forward-looking reform-based steps such as the GST taxation which was brought in, one nation to have one taxation, and also the IBC have improved the environment for doing business in India, both at the central government level and to an extent with the state government also. We are working together along with the industry chambers which are meeting with their respective state governments to make sure that doing business in India is going to be fairly easy, compliance burden will be reduced, and laws will be simplified so that omissions and commissions in business, which happens without malafide, cannot be treated with penalties or imprisonment. So even those are coming down. These reforms will continue, and the path towards 2047, making India a developed country, is very clear before us. India needs to have its agriculture nicely opened up so that the farmers get good price for their produces. Their productivity will have to increase. Their input cost has to be brought down, and farm should be a rewarding exercise or work. More value addition to the farm-based products, post-harvest, from storage to preservation, a lot of work is yet to be taken up, and we should be following in that path. India will have to be a manufacturing hub, despite a lot of people who think or who even advise saying India need not work for being a manufacturing country. I think that's a misdirected advice. We need to have manufacturing. And India's strength has been in small and medium manufacturing. MSMEs have always lived in this country, flourished in this country, and contributed to its GDP. We need to encourage them. We need to give an environment which is favorable for them to do business. But that doesn't mean that I'm not giving any space for scaled up large industries, which actually have the benefit of the economies of scale. And therefore, we need to have in those sectors where scaling brings advantage, large companies which can match up the demand requirements of export markets. So for manufacturing, there need not be any cloud of doubt. We need to move forward with policies which are going to help all these sections. But one guiding principle even there should be that we should be Atmanirbhar. For those things that we will want, for our demands, we should look for Indian products rather than import. And if India has the capacity to produce such imports, we should produce them rather than import them. For that, again, I would think Indian entrepreneurs will have to study the market, look at those items which are getting imported, which are absolutely critical for Indian consumption requirements, and see if we can produce them rather than a quick fix, easy to import solution. So if manufacturing will have to be made up and invested in, is it rewarding at all? Need not be a question. I'll give you just two facts for us to consider on that ground. Look at the way in the last 4 years, 5 years, defense production in this country has been encouraged. We are producing to meet our own requirements, and we are producing to export. Export earnings have gone up to 23,000 crores, and purely on defense component exports. You must have seen in the papers today that we are sending BrahMos to Philippines. So India's equipments, defense components, defense items that are being produced see a global welcome. We should tap that market a lot. Immediate implication is if we are good enough to export those, they will also be good enough for us to use, for our armed forces to use. I remember at least 200 to 250 items were reserved of all the components which are being produced by MSMEs for defense consumption, being reserved for them, so that if defense forces find those products qualitatively good, they've tried and tested them, they should at least ensure that 10 years they would procure from Indian manufacturers rather than import. That has helped many of the manufacturers to see the prospect of a sure captive market, and therefore investments are coming in there as well. Similar is the case of products which are being manufactured in India for Indian consumption as much as for exports. There are several items that we can look at and say that for India's consumption, today we manufacture our own. In a way, to a large extent, solar for renewable energy. Earlier was completely import. Today, we get a lot of them being manufactured in India. Electric vehicles are getting manufactured in India. Policies have to be in such a way framed so that that transition from we import everything to we import somewhat, but sooner we shall make it all in India. That transition has to be facilitated both through legislative and fiscal measures, and that is why PLI is generously given for all those sunrise sectors where we see prospects of scaling up and prospects of jobs. With this kind of a roadmap and also very clearly establishing the fact that India has the potential to move as global leaders in technology intensive areas, artificial intelligence, I have announced, I remember in this budget, Center for Establishing Excellence in Artificial Intelligence in India. That will enable our young people to be able to get themselves trained and be ready for 21st century requirements in Indian industry, which is also moving, transitioning towards technology intensive production. That removes errors, that brings in efficiency. You are qualitatively much superior to many of your competitors. And above all, it brings in precision in manufacturing. And therefore, industry in India is moving towards using technology, the higher end technology, and we should keep our youngsters ready to be absorbed in these kind of industries. That is the reason why there is a lot of prominence given to the sunrise sectors, whether it is space, whether it is rare earths, advanced chemistries, renewable energy. We are bringing it all and helping with policy. So investors in India today are also looking at investments, and in standing in Gujarat, I can highlight to you the investments happening in semiconductor is completely Indian. Indian investors, 2 places in Gujarat and 1 in Assam are all investments coming from Indian investors. So for all those who keep asking me, you reduce the corporate tax rate, you help the industries get over the twin balance sheet problem, but is the Indian industry coming? They also remind me, saying you were of the feeling that Indian industries are not coming forward as much as you expected. There was a time when I urged them, nudged them to come forward, but today you see examples of how Indian investments are coming in and in big frontier areas. So, as I said, the path to Vikasit Bharat is emphasized through policy on agriculture, improving agriculture, highlighting the sunrise sectors, making India a manufacturing hub, Atmanirbhar principle guiding us, and as it is, service sector contributes more than 60%, 62% to our GDP. Even that has to be growing, and for which we need to have a lot more engagement with that area. Startups are contributing to improving efficiencies. Startups are in fintech area, they are into agriculture, they are into processing, they are giving in situ solutions for infrastructure. So the path is very clear towards Vikasit Bharat, and Honorable Prime Minister has underlined the fact that Vikasit Bharat is achievable only with Sabka Prayas. So in that, I think the contribution of Gujarat, contribution of chartered accountants, contribution of chambers of commerce who have representatives from so many different industries have to lead the way. You should guide in policy, you should guide in execution, and you should also periodically engage with the government, both state and central, to guide how policies can be sharp focused. With all that said, I'm sure there'll be some kind of an engagement with you. I rest my case for Vikasit Bharat there, and Thank you all for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, madam, for the valuable insights shared. So, madam, we'll take some questions. Yeah. Yeah. No, Jalendo. I would request the person who is asking the questions to kindly introduce themselves first.
Good evening, Honorable Finance Minister. Myself, Bharat Desai. I am from a pharmaceutical company, and as you know, madam, that Pan-India Gujarat's contribution is almost 33% in supply of medicines, manufacturing, both in exports and domestic. MSA, we have got around 140 MSME pharmaceutical manufacturing company in and around Vadodara. As you know that in GST, the biggest problem what we are facing is the inverted duty structure. On all our inputs, we are paying 18%, whereas on the finished product, we have a 5% and 12%. So that is creating a big problem for us to, our major working capital gets blocked in that. So by the time we get the refund, it takes almost 3 to 4 months. So that is one of the issue. Second, madam, earlier there was a 250% weighted basis deduction on R&D spending, and MSME was one of the beneficiary for that, because we were having a formulation development laboratory. So that incentive was making our spending for R&D facilities. Since now it has been abandoned, so we request you to please kindly reinstate that. And lastly, for also on the spending of effluent treatment plants, if that can be also covered by giving us some special deduction on the income tax, madam. Thank you so very much.
He's given me suggestions. I have nothing to say on them. Fine.
Okay.
Yes. Hello, ma'am. This is Smt Nirmala Sitharaman, Chairman of the Vadodara chapter. Yes. Chairman of the Vadodara chapter. We are the governance professional, ma'am. We try to execute implement the policy as the MCA execute. We are in the digital India, we are the good things, version 3 is coming, but at the same time, certain time we facing the issue of the technical glitches. So sometimes we seek the extension, our stakeholder face the difficulties because we are just executor of the, within 30 days बोलता है तो हमको upload करना पड़ता है. But at the same time, कुछ technical glitch के साथ हो नहीं पाता है. So in this scenario, we need some improvements in our system and support system, because sometimes we call to the service support team and they are maybe not aware about our questions and they're not under the technical glitches and we are facing the loss of penalties. So हमको नहीं होता है, हमारे MSME के clients को ये चीज़ होती है, तो please मैम थोड़ा वो है. And one member have some questions, so can you give mic?
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. I'm the Rahul Agrawal, CA Rahul Agrawal, the chairman of Vadodara Chapter Chartered Accountant Association. Is it fine? Am I disturbing you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. So, ma'am, the burning issue that MSME is facing is the Section 43BH. So, I request you to please throw some lights that they could find some relaxation on that Section 43BH issue.
Hello, madam. Good evening. I have 3 questions. One already told regarding the inclusion of subsection H in 43B. It is very good that everyone will get the payment on time, but who are supplying to the government by different tenders or things, their payment is not coming from the government section. So they are finding unable to pay. And the government are major buyers. So kindly in this direction also, you should consider, madam.
I should consider what? Making government pay within 45 days.
Yeah,
All
madam. Thank you, madam. Thank you for assurance. Second thing, when we are bidding the international tenders, even though the tender is passed, they ask for the bank guarantee within 10 days. Our system is that, I am the sufferer, our system is that even the SBI does not give the payment in, forget about the 10 days. I am struggling since last 1.5 months, the payment has not gone. So I do not know what happened after winning the tender event. And it's very difficult to win the international tenders. So this is the situation because government wants that the foreign currency should come, but this is a ground reality that I am struggling for the bank guarantee. And third thing, madam, we deposit the payment. If any government is, say for the appeal, GST appeal or any, we deposit the payment and 6%, we get the interest of 6%. But the government charges from us 18% and top of that, double it as a penalty. So really, it breaks the bone of the entrepreneurs. So government must do something in this regard, madam, because with great difficulty and putting all their lives, they raise their industries, and just with one clause, they are broken. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Good evening. I'll limit myself to questions. So, I'm Nishit Dan, representing CII. I think you have done a fantastic job on the 45-day interlock mechanism on taxation. I think it's time to digest, but it'll definitely prove a benefit to the MSME. So, I appreciated the interlock which you have kind of provided. My question is, on the government incentivization side, there is plethora of incentives by state and by center on the MSME side on the incentive, whether it's capital subsidy, et cetera, so many, on the new projects, on VAT, GST, et cetera. What kind of interlocks have you thought of on those, execution of those incentives? Are there similar kind of interlocks which you have done in the 45-day payment scheme, which you have clearly put on the taxation side? Have you thought of any interlocks on the MSME incentive disbursal scheme? That is question one. Second, in this global scenario today, where there's war, in the last scenario when Ukraine-Russia war happened, MSME was impacted. We could have taken, India would have taken an advantage on different sides of that particular situation. But now with so many conflicts going on, how do you see 2 years whether the industry is going to embrace the issue on logistical nightmares and etc. what we had in the Ukraine-Russia war, where we really took a hit, in fact, specifically on the chemical manufacturing side. But what do you see in the next 2 years on this current situation which is emerging in the global side? Thank you.
You know, the first question that you asked, we have not come up with any interlocking. Government does not go in that kind of a speed in anticipation of a problem somewhere, and to find a solution, it doesn't come up with such responses without consultation. The Income Tax Act provision was brought in on the request of MSMEs. It was not a out-of-the-box solution which the income, no way. It was essentially something which was suggested to us and we brought it in. So that probably will answer your first question, that for the other things also, I am now getting curious, but it might frighten your own comrades. Give us ideas for further interlocking on other things so that we can tighten the system up. Not for my tax collection, but for industry which seems to have solution at one end, but a shut door on the other end. Every such, the point that you have found it fit to raise a question like that, that you need interlocking in very many other areas, is because you find, like the earlier question which was asked about bank guarantees. I'll certainly have to go back to the bank saying you have no business to delay somebody in providing a bank guarantee for a project and a tender which has been won to take 1.5 months. Defeats the purpose, and I would think the bank will have to be held liable. So there is a need for us to use your word, repeat your word, interlock everywhere so that efficiencies or omissions and commissions which have inadvertently come into the system, which sometimes goes against us knowingly, because we know it exists, but it hits me, I'm unable to do anything about it. So I would like you to identify the places where you need to have such interlocking brought in so that systems flow easily. But we don't do it on our own. And sometimes I'm happy for it because I don't want the bureaucracy to be too speedy on things which industry can better understand. You can tell us from the ground, no, this doesn't work this way, therefore you do it this other way. We'll happily do it. But for a bureaucrat to imagine that and do it sometimes may hurt you rather than help you. So I would rather have inputs come from you for me to have, these kind of safeguards built into the system so that nothing is left to, oversight which gets missed out. So that's your first one. Second, I don't think anyone can have an answer, be it government, be it anybody, about how these challenges which are developing in the Middle East or in the war situation or Russia's war with Ukraine and also the China-US relationship, as we go, so we learn. It is just not possible to predict, except of course in the futures market you will see, will the oil go this way, will it go that much, will it cross 100? Possible to go on along with the futures market predictions. Other than that, I don't know whether it is possible. Whoever would have thought that the Israel-Gaza war would also spin over to Iran? So I think we have to be constantly watchful of what is happening and taking action accordingly.
Anyone else who would like to ask? Please.
Hello, ma'am. I'm CA Jigarsha, Treasurer of Vadodara branch of ICI. My question is regarding Income Tax Settlement Commission. So, ma'am, there is a, due to closure of Settlement Commission, there is a risk of increased litigations and there may be a survival issue of many businesses. So, could we consider reintroducing of a similar mechanism?
I may not be in a position to answer that now.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. I am Devesh Pathak. I am practicing company secretary and insolvency professional. As you referred in your lecture, IBC has helped a lot to the banks and even to the companies for their revival. But there are some gray area in a way that IBC has got overriding effect over the provisions of many acts. So my suggestion is that clarity should be made as to which provisions of Companies Act need not be applied so that it will be implemented in better way. Apart from that, I feel that for expeditious solutions, benches of NCLT, they should be increased so that IBC and other matters of other laws also can be addressed. And as rightly suggested by Mitul, and there is a requirement of more user-friendly portal of Ministry of Corporate Affairs, which will help we all professionals to contribute in better way. And last but not least, best wishes for Fir Ek Baar Modi Sarkar and your continuance as a finance minister. Thank you.
We have time for another three questions.
नमस्ते मैडम, मेरा नाम प्रदीप अग्रवाल और मैं बिजनेस करता हूँ और चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हूँ और भारत पेट्रोलियम के बोर्ड पे इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर हूँ। मेरा प्रश्न उसी से संबंधित है कि जितने भी PSUs हैं, उन PSUs के जो मार्केट वैल्यूएशंस हैं और उनकी जो इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू है, उसके कंपैरिजन में इट इज मच लेसर एक्चुअली इफ इट इज कंपेयर्ड विद द प्राइवेट सेक्टर। और उसका मैंने जो 2.5 वर्ष में समझने का कोशिश किया, लाइक जैसे भारत पेट्रोलियम का ही केस, उसका आज का मार्केट कैप लगभग 1,20,000 करोड़ का है, जबकि उसका इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू कम से कम 10, 12, 15 लाख करोड़ रुपए का भारत पेट्रोलियम का वैल्यू होना चाहिए एक्चुअली, गोइंग बाय दी प्राइवेट सेक्टर पैरामीटर्स। तो उसमें ध्यान क्या आता है कि केवल उन सब के साथ में एक ही विषय कि वो सरकारी क्षेत्र की कंपनियां हैं, चाहे वो कितनी भी उनके पास वैल्यूज हैं, चाहे उनकी कितनी भी अच्छी परफॉर्मेंस है। नो डाउट इन लास्ट 2 years द वैल्यूएशन हैज कम टू ए रीजनेबल लेवल, बट स्टिल मैडम लाइक सीट इज मच चीपर। सो मेरा इसमें एक सजेशन ऐसा था कि सरकार इस विषय में और गहराई से एक्सपर्ट से एडवाइस ले, और दूसरा इफ पॉसिबल the disinvestment or the government holdings can be brought down to 49% so that sarkari brand goes away from those companies and वो जो पैसा आएगा वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए, पब्लिक वेलफेयर के लिए खर्च हो सकता है मैडम। ऐसा मेरा सजेशन है। थैंक यू।
Very good afternoon. My name is Anuj and I run a manufacturing company here in Vadodara. We manufacture various tailor-made engineered equipment. My question is a little more specific. It's regarding to, there's a lot of implementation of recently in several range of products of BIS norms, where there are quality control orders being put up so that substandard imports are not coming into the country, which is, in my opinion, a good policy. But at the same time, for our kind of a product, we use a lot of aluminium, and it's a very niche alloy and a niche product which the domestic industry has very little or almost, let's say, no demand. And so there are no producers of those kind of alloys or those kind of tempers and so on and so forth. So in such cases, like let's say the question is, how can the government make sure that before these orders come in, there are enough certified out of India vendors so that the supply chain doesn't get disrupted and we are able to import till the time the domestic industry can provide us with the requisite material that is required.
You sound very simple in the question. What is BIS? Getting quality in,
Yes.
right? Whether you have buyers within India or you're exporting. You're bringing in a certain level of standard in its manufacturing. It is certainly aimed at stopping poor quality imports, because no amount of duty on poor quality import will stop imports coming, because they'll go on doing a support. Every time you raise the rate here, they give a subsidy. So you're not going to be able to stop them purely through tariff. Non-tariff, legitimate way of stopping it is by saying it should meet a certain standard. Now, global trade norms require that if you set that standard, it should be such a standard that your own country practices it. You can't be so manipulative to say, look, I am setting a standard because I know you send me poor quality goods. But for my country, I will not set that standard on my manufacturers, because we will live with poor manufacturing, poor quality products. You can't say that. Equally, I'm also aware, I'm concerned that you are probably talking about such niche products which have an audience or a market somewhere, and why should you be brought under it? It's so niche that you're telling me that out of 100, one is your product, so for that one, give me an exemption. Possibly they can, but you should contact the concerned BIS controlling department and say, for these requirements, I don't want this imposed on me. But you may not be able to guarantee still imports of that very same product, poor quality coming in. So whether I should save you or save the entire country's foreign exchange reserve, or the poor quality buyers of this country who think cheap is good enough and lose foreign exchange. You may think about it and talk to the concerned.
Yeah, namaste ma'am. Myself C.S. Tanki, and I am employee of private company. I want to know one thing about, is there any plan to change financial year from April to March to calendar year? Or
No.
Is there? No. Okay. And the
Not
second,
unless you know something more than I do.
Because we are into MNC companies, so we are finding a lot of different to match that. And second is there any tax benefit coming for a salaried taxpayer? So that also.
For who?
Salaried taxpayer.
Salaried
Yeah,
taxpayer.
salaried, yes.
I thought the second alternative tax regime that we've given itself comes up with, good rates. It's also got standard deduction now. It doesn't allow for any exemptions, but the rate is favorable. That's all I know till now.
Ma'am, one last question. I am a budding chartered accountant, and my question is twofold. First, in an interview, our Prime Minister has said that by 2047, he wants zero intervention of government in the middle class. So how Finance Ministry is taking steps in this regard? And second,
2047.
by 2047, yeah. So when our country would be a Viksit Bharat. And I'm also pursuing PG diploma in banking. So my study was on the bad bank, which you introduced in the budget 2021, the NARCL and IDRCL. But my study suggests that there are two issues. First, the PSUs are not transferring the assets because of the price mismatch. And second, there is no secondary market for security receipts. So what would be the way ahead?
So we are working for some solutions on that. I think you're referring to a time, you're right, you're referring to a time when it was the first 2 years after setting up the NARCL ARM mechanism. But now I think things have changed a lot, because the right kind of personnel have been appointed in both these institutions. Banks are also, because we had very clearly told banks, NPAs above 500 crores will have to be moved out. A certain number was given to them saying you do this much at least within the first year. So now you probably will get different numbers to show that it is now far better activated and it's going on. It is working out well. What was your first question? Till 2047?
Yeah.
I may not be even authorized to speak for that long.
So
But
in the
yes,
next,
in terms of middle class, one thing I would have wanted to say even during my speech is, if we are wanting to make India have more manufacturing, it's also on the ground, and I strongly believe that it has to be on the ground, that our middle class population will reach 30 crores by the time 2030. And by the time 2047, we'll be 70 crore middle class Indians with purchasing power in our hands, which means we are going to demand world-class goods in India itself for rupee. So the need for Indian manufacturers with or without foreign capital to produce in India so that you are able to meet the growing demand of middle class is so clear before us. So by 2047, if I have to make sure that this consumption is kept up, and going by the economic activity which will generate its own resources and expand the GDP, there can be scope for further and further simplification of tax structures, both for direct and indirect.
Good evening, ma'am. My name is Vishesh, and we have a family-owned MSME company for contract manufacturing. It is in my own personal experience that I've recently faced. I wanted to highlight one issue where if government can do anything for MSMEs or companies in general. So during tax audits, we have recently received a show cause notice from the tax department, GST, where we provided all the responses, and just before a few days, the officer got transferred and he released the order. Instead of seeing our responses, he has given the order. Now, to fight that order, we have to go for the appeal. And for that, we have to make some payment and also hire a legal team. But what we feel is that if the officer himself has his own intentions to negotiate something or that, and he is giving this order, it is a waste of time, effort, and money for the companies. And because it takes a long time to get the results in the appeal, we feel that that officer also should have some consequences. If we win, then he has to bear our legal expenses, or at least he should be penalized for, like what we are penalized for after losing, he should also be penalized for when we win the case. Because these officers, sometimes we feel that they are not looking out for the government, they are looking out for themselves. And I, as a young person who is not so experienced in the business, I feel that if these something can be done about this, then it would be helpful for us.
Just a curiosity question, is this state GST person or central GST person?
GST person. Recently it was a GST this thing.
State or center?
GST, our is under state. Our people are from the VAT department, the previous regime. So we deal with those people.
In this particular problem, it is SGST or CGST?
SGST.
SGST.
I'm not sure exactly.
All right. Anyway, I'll have a look.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Hello. Good evening, ma'am. थोड़ा अलग क्वेश्चन है because I am a Manoj Shah from Baroda Management Association और मैं belong करता हूँ corrosion industry से. I am a corrosion management. See, in our country or in the world, every 14 seconds we lose a ton of the steel, ton of the iron. But I think what we are doing to protect the steels, because anti-corrosive paints comes under the same category of the normal paints. So we have to make it affordable to all the people who do the efforts to maintain the corrosion controls. Because see, since 30 years in this industry, I was working with one of the corporates. Now I have my own company, we are doing the painting jobs and all that. But still, anti-corrosive paints are very costly. It's not affordable to everyone. So what my request and suggestion is, what government is doing to make affordable all the anti-corrosive paints? Do they remove from the normal paint category or whatever? I think you people decide the better things. But what our request is, make the anti-corrosive paints affordable to everyone, because we have to make the corrosion-free society. That is the mission and movement we are taking on. Thank you.
No, we'll have time for another.
Good
Last
evening,
question.
ma'am. My concern is about the products which we are producing in India. We are able to export those products. But unfortunately, what is happening, why we are able to export is because there are certain tariffs in place in those countries and we are able to export it. But when we are trying to sell those products in our own country, the tariffs are not there, or whatever the issues are there in the departments. Not the departments, when we are approaching the departments for AD, CVD and all those things are taking such a long time that we land up in a situation where we are nowhere in the domestic market.
Are you in a SCZ?
No.
So why would you have a problem when you want to sell within the country?
I don't want to, no, what I'm trying to say is I'm not able to sell my own product in my own country.
That's what I'm asking you. If you have to sell within your country.
Because of China. The products which are coming from the China is so low in price, which everybody knows in most of the cases they are dumping the material all over.
Right.
Right. And when we approach other countries, they have certain tariffs in place. And because of that tariffs, those products are not going to those markets. So there only we are able to sell our product. But in my own country, when I'm approaching the departments, the time duration is such a long, like it's been ages now, like I'm not been able to sell my product in my own country. So you're not getting my question.
I'm getting your question,
Yeah.
but you seem to be looking at this issue very differently. To sell in your own country, nothing stops you.
But yeah,
hang
sorry.
on. If I'm telling you something which I've wrongly understood, stop me and correct me.
Please. Correct.
But the way you're putting this whole thing, I think, makes it look very complicated. Nothing, first of all, stops you from selling in this country. But if you're telling me you're not able to cost compete with China, that's not somebody stopping you. That's somebody telling you that cheaper products are coming from outside. And as a result, even if yours is good quality, you're not able to sell it. Now I have to stop the products coming from outside. I was just telling that gentleman who spoke to me about BIS, that with just tariffs I'm unable to stop. One. Second, as I said, if I will levy a tariff, they immediately give some kind of a boost for that export, so it still comes underpriced. It still comes at cheaper price and so on. So in order to stop it through non-tariff ways, in India we are bringing in standards. In his question, that was the answer I gave. But while answering it, I explained to you saying cheaper products come for several reasons. There are buyers in India who still think those intermediary products coming cheap helps them to produce, whether for the domestic market or for export, in a cheaper way. And being small industries, they don't want this import completely stopped. So we have a complex problem in India. There are still Indian manufacturers who look for raw materials or semi-finished raw materials to come from, say, China, because it is cheaper. Now, if you're a lot more, I don't know what governs your pricing structure, if you're able to produce in such a way that you can price your product to compete with China, our own people will buy it. Nobody stops you from selling in India. You're projecting it, or in the way you said, I'm at least understanding as though there is somebody stopping you. Nobody's stopping you.
No, that obviously nobody is stopping us, but the thing, what is happening?
Not able to sell in India.
Yeah,
No. That's
I
your
take my
efficiency and business model.
So I take my words back here. But if you compare, like, when other countries are imposing tariffs.
They're also imposing, yeah. Let me tell you, I'm sure all of you all will know. WTO every now and then says India is the maximum tariff levying country.
Ma'am, you compare ourselves with USA. Every year they are...
All right, I can argue with you, you can argue with me, we both can go and argue in WTO, but that's the reality.
But the fact is like...
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
we come to the close of question answer session.